Thank you, Professor Subbu, for making that very strong argument, particularly the power of compounding that all of us who have a background in economics will appreciate. That's the reason why some predictions stop at 26 and some, like he has made doubles, right? Just by a few numbers, if you change that, what happens? And a very strong argument for that. I've gone through the book. It is a very rigorous academic argument that he's making there. But naturally, something that comes to our minds is that every country is different. You cannot compare us with China or of Japan of 1970s and how that is going to happen. You have been saying this word potential, just like you mentioned Sachin's example, and India has a potential. What is that potential that you see in India? Maybe other countries had it or they didn't have it. And what are our unique challenges? Because every country is different. We cannot be extrapolating others' journey and applying it to us. So, do you see something there which makes India different from others, and what are those strengths and challenges that we have?
So, Shobhit, I think, what I'm saying is that we cannot be mimicking other countries, but we should certainly be learning from other countries' experiences. The fact that other countries are different is oftentimes actually used as an argument for us to have a frog in the well attitude, which is not what I recommend. We should be learning, and the important point is this, other countries that grew, it's not as if they did not encounter challenges. They encountered different challenges. If you look at Japan from the 1970 to 1995 period, this was a period where there was the Vietnam War. This was the period where there was the tremendous oil shock, which led to hyperinflation in the United States. At that time, actually, demand in most other countries was not as strong, and yet Japan grew. Once again, I cannot emphasize this enough. In India, we particularly we love to just latch on to negatives. We love running down, and focusing on challenges. I will emphasize that, I like to see an opportunity in a challenge. Others like to see challenge in every opportunity. And I think it is about the way in which we look at. While these may sound like cliches, these are cliches because they work. And that is why the importance of the point of view that we have. This is, it's an opportunity for sure. It's a challenge as well. And let me again use that same example of Sachin. Of course, at the time when Sunil Gavaskar made that prediction, he did not anticipate the tennis elbow injury, nor did he anticipate some of the difficulties during the Greg Chappell era. Those were headwinds. But at the same time, Sunil Gavaskar didn't anticipate the tailwind that came from the quartet that came along. Rahul Dravid, VVS Lakshman, Saurav Ganguly and Sehwag. He didn't anticipate that either. In other words, I think what we have to do is, in a balanced manner, we have to recognize that when you look over a 20-25 year period, while there will be challenges, and I'm not discounting that, but at the same time, there'll be headwinds, but there'll be tailwinds as well. This asymmetric focus only on the challenges is something which has basically brews a lot of negativity. And I fundamentally believe that while positive thinking is necessary for positive outcomes to manifest, negative thinking is sufficient for negative outcomes to manifest. And that is why positivity is really important. With that philosophical, a statement, and I think which is really critical, especially for a student audience, if in my 50s I can still continue to be optimistic, you all in your 20s certainly should be optimistic. Let me focus on where are the opportunities. 8% growth. See, one of the things that we do, we basically extrapolate from in incorrect ways from advanced economies. If you look at growth that has happened in the advanced economies, it has happened only from productivity shocks. Why? Because their investment is almost stagnant. They build their bridges, they build their ports, airports, and all of the infrastructure, everything, and the investment they have had to make. So investment is saturated. Also, almost their entire economy has been formalized for a long time. As a result, the only key driver of growth, economic growth, has been productivity growth, which itself has come from basically productivity shocks. Be it the internet era, be it the outsourcing to China, India, etc., or for instance now the artificial intelligence, it is productivity shocks that have basically driven growth there. In contrast, a country like India, a large part of our economy still continues to be informal. Now, you will view that as a challenge, maybe others will view it as a challenge, but I view that as an opportunity, especially given what has happened in the last several years, where significant efforts have been made to encourage formalization in the economy, be it the GST, be it the public digital infrastructure. Those have encouraged formalization significantly. I'm sure you can, students here will agree, 10 years back, if you went to Sarojini Nagar to maybe buy a belt, with the vendor who was basically vending there, didn't even have a shop, you would have paid with cash. Today, you pay him basically using Google, GPay or Paytm. And he can use that data to go and get credit from the bank, which was not possible because the bank officer wouldn't have believed, his earnings. Now he has the data to show, and that enables him to actually become part of the formal economy. And I can keep giving examples like that. Second, so that's the first driver. Second, if you look at even our formal sector firms have not grown, in terms of their productivity, they've not reached the level of the global peers. They are about 1/4 to 1/5 of the productivity of global peers. And given the important drivers that, the trends, momentum that is there on two things, innovation and entrepreneurship. Innovation, India actually entered the top 50 countries in innovation for the first time in 2019 after languishing in the, beyond the top hundreds, till 2014, 2015. Now, India is part of the top 40 countries on innovation. Entrepreneurship, if you look at the new firm creation from 2004 to 2014, and this is World Bank data, new firm creation grew at a CAGR of 3.2%. Since then, from 2014 onward, it has grown an orders of magnitude higher. And that also enables us to basically, really bring about productivity improvement. And finally, credit growth. I'm not even getting into the human capital aspects, education, healthcare, judiciary, bureaucracy, which I've covered, but these are really key drivers, and these are lesser, sort of lower hanging fruits that we can pluck. Credit growth, if you look at, the world average for private credit to GDP, in the country, average private credit to basically capture the amount of credit penetration. If you look at advanced economies, many of them are close to 200%. In 1960, the private credit to GDP ratio was 60%. If you look at for India, even in 2020, the ratio of private credit to GDP is 58%. In other words, we are 6 decades behind on credit penetration. This is why I actually require, having a global perspective. If you remain like a frog in the well and keep, on the one hand, say India is different, or on the other hand, basically, don't compare with the globe, then we don't know what are the things that other countries have done. Credit penetration can increase significantly. I'll just give you the example of South Korea. If you look at the private credit to GDP ratio there, in 1960, it was 6% in South Korea. We were at 8% in 1960. From that level, from 6%, South Korea grew to 178%. We've only grown up to 58%. And, there is huge potential there. So it is really important, and I cannot emphasize this, especially among students. The whole point of education is so that you learn to think without blinkers. And I think, and not be intellectual sheep. If you basically are believing, and I know whatever I am saying as well, I want you to think critically. Go and read the book fully, look at every piece of data that I've given you, and then decide whether you agree or disagree with me. If you are basically, just because I am saying that it's going to be 55 trillion, you just start believing that without having critically evaluated, you are being intellectual sheep, which is something which actually I can see, whether it's scholar X or Y or Z. If you're just listening, because scholar X said it, I'm going to believe it, you're being intellectual sheep. You're not using the education that education is supposed to make you think independently and not be intellectual sheep. That is what is really critical, in order to be able to, if you start believing, use sound economic arguments and data, you will start seeing that there is credibility in what I'm actually talking about.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Especially, when I see a lot of data being used and very rigorously collected from across the world, the global perspective that you are saying. And you're also saying that each country has its own stories, have their set of, if you look at them as challenges, but you see a lot of upside in India, especially the different sectors that you mentioned, the informal economy, the low credit penetration, and all of them have a huge upside. And that is why you think that the argument that we can grow consistently at 8% for 20 years, you believe that can happen.